Today I'm working on some outdoor decorations, or outdoor props, I guess you could say, for Christmas. And I've already cut one and tested with it because I've never cut this stuff before. Tests were great, so let's jump into the actual final result, or final project. This is foam panels. These are foam panels, a 2-inch thick and a 1-inch thick. I'm going to save the 1-inch for something else, but today I'm going to be cutting in this 2-inch thick. Specifically, this is Owens Corning Foamular High Performance XPS insulation, and it cuts beautifully with a router. So I'm going to make a nativity scene out of it, but real quick on the pricing. This 2-inch thick panel, 4 foot by 8 foot, 2 inches thick, is $60 where I live. So $60 is $30 per 1 inch of thickness. But if you get a 1/2 inch thick panel, it's $17 locally. A 1-inch thick panel is $18 locally. So honestly, the best bang for your buck in my situation is 1-inch thick panels, and if you need to stack them, stack them. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to cut the thing that I want, the nativity scene, out of this 2-inch thick, just because it's going to be a little bit more stable. So I've already made one test cut, one full iteration of it. I've got to make two for two different people. So let's go over there and we'll talk about what I learned while testing the first one. This is the first one that I cut, and it's not perfect by any means, but I learned a lot from it. So for size, from side to side here, not including the points of the roof, but side to side is 6 feet, and from the bottom to the top up there is 47 inches. So it's going to take up the majority of a full panel. And if you look closely, I think you can see the detail on the camera. If not, I'll zoom in. You'll see all of these different profile lines where I was cutting the pocket, and there's a couple different depths here on accident, and then there's one big one right here. So what happened is, as I was cutting, well, first off, I held the panel down with 4 screws, one on either corner, and as I was cutting, I noticed that it was starting to lift up in the middle of it. Now, I don't know if that's because I was using a shallow upcut bit, shallow spiral upcut bit, or if it was the fact that the panel was just bent to begin with, or bowed to begin with on the table, and I just didn't notice it. So we'll learn from that going forward. And then this really big line right here is when I did notice that it was bowing up in the panel. I put my hand down, pushed down on it to see how much it was bowing, and that's when it took this pass, so we got a big raise. That doesn't really matter too much because this foam is easy to shave, and I'll just shave that down. This is all going to be painted flat black on the pocket area, so it's all going to kind of fade away and hide. And this is going to be seen from the road, so 50 feet away, 30 feet away from the road, something like that. So you're not going to see any detail anyway. That being said, let's talk about the bit that I used, and then we'll jump into actually cutting it. I spoke with my friends over at Bits and Bits, and these are the 3 bits that they recommended I check out or keep on hand for some foam cutting. And we have a couple different things here. First off is a 1-inch length of cut, 1/8 of an inch diameter, a 1-inch length of cut, 1/4 inch diameter, Astra coated, and a 2-inch length of cut, 1/4 inch cutting diameter, non-Astra coated. Now I did all of my tests with this one here in the middle, and that's the one that I'll use for all of the cuts on the final product because I still need to go through 2 inches of material. But let me bring this in close, and you can see this spiral on here. This is a shallow spiral. It's still a spiral upcut bit, so I will get a little bit of upward pull from the material. There's no way around doing that when you have a spiral of any kind, an upcut anyway. This is not that aggressive though, so I won't get nearly as much upward pull on this one compared to a normal upcut end mill. This is after the entire use on that first panel, so still pretty clean. Does a great job, and this is the one that I'm going to be using for the project. Now, I don't know off the top of my head the speeds and feeds that I settled on, but I'll put on the screen the speeds and feeds that Bits recommended starting with, and then I'll put my feed and speeds that I ended up going with when it was all said and done. I did a lot of testing, and man, you can just plow through material with this and still get really good cuts. This is the skeleton from the testing piece, and there's still a lot of usable material, so I'll go ahead and remove this and then set it to the side so I can use this for other stuff like tombstones or something like that for Halloween. I wish everything that I put on the CNC machine was this light. It's like holding a pizza. Pizza's probably heavier than this with all the stuff I'd put on it. Anyway, now this is interesting. I think my screws might be affecting how it's laying flat because when I set this down here, I made sure to put it so that there's a bow facing down. That way the sides will hold it down with the screws, but it's still flexing up in the middle. So I think no matter what I do, I'm just gonna have that upward flexing, unless I use a bunch of double stick tape on the bottom, or maybe some of the, the blue tape, super glue in between trick, or simply have a vac table, which I do not have. So instead of, as it's cutting, checking it to make sure it's not lifting up, I know that will cause some of those little lines on the first piece, so I'm just gonna let it go. Just gonna let it go. Just let it go. Let it go, let it go. Don't sing that song anymore. This foam isn't specifically made for signs or decoration or anything like that. So there are a couple things that I wish didn't happen. Number one, I wish they did not, from the manufacturer, put these brake lines in here. So this is a building product, right? It's insulation. They have these lines already scored in here so you could break it at 24 inches or at 16 inches from either side. So there's 3 lines that run through this thing, and you can really see it if you look at the end of the material. You can really see it there. So for something like this that's going to be a yard decoration, I'm not too concerned about it. But if you get a paying gig where you're making a sign for a business or something, this isn't the right material. There's these score lines that are probably going to be distracting. I did not make the profile go all the way through the end of the material here because I wanted to use this kind of like a giant tab, and then it's very easy to cut with a little handsaw anyway. So this is, well, it's blocking a lot of the light. This is, like I said, not exactly sign foam, but it is rigid enough and cuts clean enough to where small stuff like this is still pretty solid and shouldn't break off. So how are we going to attach this to the ground, or how are we going to get this to stay up out in the yard? Let me spin this around and show you the hardware that I'm going to experiment with. Because, like I said, I've never done this before. These are what's called a 2-hole strap, and this is the package they came in. I picked these up at my local Lowe's for $1. It's a 5-pack of a rigid 2-hole strap, and I'm going to use 5 per panel. So this is going to be a 6-foot span, evenly divided, 2, 1, and then 2 for the vertical columns. And inside each one of these, I will use a piece of rebar stuck in the ground. Now, I've never done this before, so I'm just kind of winging it. I'm going to attach these with a little bit of paint. I'll put some paint down and then attach it, kind of use the paint as glue. It's going to stick to it. And then I'll use these kind of a coarse screw to go through these into the foam. That should do a pretty good job of holding it, holding these to the foam. Now, how do I attach this to the ground? I'm going to use rebar stakes. And I don't know how long I'm going to go, but 1/2-inch rebar should slide through these holes. And I'm gonna try it. Like I said, I've never done this. So if you have done something like this where you're attaching yard decorations to the ground outside, let me know in the comments how you did it and the success or failure that you had with that particular method. The best way to paint something is to watch somebody else paint it for you. And luckily, my wife asked if her and my daughter could paint it as a fun thing to do together. And I said, absolutely, you two could do it, because I don't want to. Here it is on our front porch, well, close to the front porch. I don't know how far I'm gonna pull this out. I gotta wait until I get a light to go right here somewhere, and then wherever the light fits properly and spacing, I'll adjust it. Anyway, it's pretty cool. So it's 6 feet wide, just shy of 4 feet tall. And the mounting system that I previously mentioned is what I used. So I've got 3 pieces of rebar. These side pieces were 45. I got a 10-foot stick of 1/2-inch rebar, and then I cut a 45-inch piece, a 45-inch piece, and whatever was left over I stuck in the middle. So each one of these is, I mean, it's a good 1.5 feet into the ground. It's holding it up just fine. I'm not entirely confident that this system of holding is gonna do well long term. So I think if these start to pull out, I'll probably end up going the route of using a piece of like 3/4 inch PVC and gluing it the entire way, all the way down on both sides with hot melt glue. Maybe that'll work, I'm not sure. But I just thinking about it, I think that would probably hold better than this method. The screws just rip out of the foam. So I put a bunch of paint inside the connection there, hoping the paint will kind of act as a glue and hold it a little bit better. But it feels pretty sturdy. So I just gotta, and I didn't take too much time to make sure the back is perfect, because of course it's a yard decoration. No one cares about the back. Everyone cares about what it looks like from the road and whatnot. So next up is a light, some nighttime shots, and setting it up exactly where it needs to be.